Hello, friends. It's Aunt Nikki of Your Story Hour, and we're here today to read more of our book, The Bluebirds and Their Neighbors by Neil Wayne Northey. Let's see what's going on. Chapter 21. We're moving through this book. The Adventures of Barney the Shrew. Whiskers the Mouse was not the only one who moved away from the granary when Spot the Skunk moved in. There were many other mice who looked for a safer place to live. Some of them investigated the woodshed by the grand old house, but they soon learned that the woodshed was not a peaceful place to live. The reason it was not a peaceful place for mice was that Barney the Shrew lived there. Now Barney the Shrew was small. He was the smallest animal that lived on the old homestead, or in North America for that matter. In fact, he was scarcely as large as a half-grown mouse. We might think that Barney would have feared the friends of Whiskers the Mouse because he was so much smaller, but that was not the case. No, sir. When Barney met any of Whiskers' friends, he braced himself by standing with his front feet apart and challenged anyone to pass. If they did not retreat, there was sure to be a fight, and usually it ended by Barney making a meal of Mr. Mouse. That was why Whiskers' friends did not stay long when they came to explore the woodshed. They were really afraid to have a fight with Barney. There's a picture. And it says, when Barney met any of Whiskers' friends, he braced his feet. There we go. Barney the Shrew liked the woodshed, and he intended to keep it for his home. You see, Barney was fond of ants and bugs and sawflies. Whenever Bud Smith cut some wood or carried some into the grand old house, there was sure to be a number of wood ants or sawflies or grubs fell out of the wood. After Bud was gone, Barney would steal out and eat them. In fact, Barney spent most of his time both day and night searching for food, besides having a very mean temper. Barney also had an appetite that was never satisfied. Even after Barney had eaten his fill of insects, in a short time he was hungry again. He ate more than any other animal in comparison with his size, sometimes devouring 2 or 3 times his own weight each day. Wow! If Barney did not have food, he would have starved to death within 2 or 3 days. That was why Barney must always be looking for something to eat. Sometimes he fought with others of his own family, for he was so ill-tempered and unsociable that he liked to live alone. If he killed another shrew, even though it was as large as himself, he sometimes ate it as one meal. Yes, Barney certainly did have a ravenous appetite, and no doubt that was what made him so mean. Whenever we eat more than we should, or eat things that are not good for us, we get irritable and ill-tempered. That was the way it was with Barney. Barney was never satisfied unless he was eating, so when he had cleaned up all the ants and sawflies and other food in the woodshed, he decided he would explore the grand old house. He was quite sure he would find something there to eat. If insects were scarce, he could always find another thing to eat, such as flour, or he might even make a meal of a mouse whenever he was able to find one. So Barney left the woodshed for a visit to the grand old house. Of course, Barney did not know that Spot the Skunk had driven many of Whiskers' friends out of the granary, and that some of them had come to the grand old house with the idea of sneaking in whenever the screen door was left open a crack. Barney did not know that Bud Smith had noticed a large number of mice running around at times, and that he had been setting traps for them. It did not take Barney long to find a tiny hole at the top of the foundation and to crawl inside. Even though Barney's eyes were so small that he could scarcely see, he had a very sensitive nose. His nose was long and covered with long hair, and he used it a great deal when he was hunting. He moved it from side to side, and if there was any insect or other food near, he was sure to find it. Barney could run up and down the side of a log or wall as easily as he could walk on the ground, and when he was hunting, he hurried here and there with his long nose working into every hole and crack. As soon as Barney got into the grand old house, the first thing he did was to run here and there, looking for something to eat. Of course, Bud Smith saw him. Bud thought he was a half-grown mouse that had crept in and had come near to being the end of Barney. And that came near to being the end of Barney, as Bud was about to strike Barney with a large fly swatter that happened to be handy. He noticed Barney's long nose. It looked a little like the long nose of a runty pig that had grown a snout entirely out of the size of the rest of its body. When Bud saw Barney's nose, he knew that Barney was not a common mouse. Even while Bud was watching Barney, he saw him pick up a dead housefly and eat it. Then Bud decided to let Barney live. Anyone who would help him catch flies was welcome. Bud remembered that he had killed a number of flies on the back porch, and he hurried away to see if he could find some. Soon he returned with a dozen or more, one of which he dropped in front of Barney. Barney thought it was strange that a fly should drop right in front of him, but he asked no questions. After he ate it, he sat up and wiggled his nose to see if he could find where it had come from. He thought he could smell more flies, and sure enough he could, for Bud was holding another one just over Barney's nose. After that, Barney ate the flies from between Bud's fingers as fast as Bud would hold them within reach, and if Bud was a little slow getting them in place, Barney would get impatient. It was great sport for Bud, but when he had to go for another supply of flies, along came Hunting Cat and spoiled it all. Most large animals did not care to bother Barney. He had a musky odor, and they did not like that. Hunting Cat probably thought Barney was a mouse. He thought he would make a meal of Barney, but sometimes even Hunting Cat missed his mark. As he was ready to pounce on Barney, Barney grew impatient and decided he would look for some flies himself. Under a door he went and left Hunting Cat feeling foolish indeed. And there he goes under the door, and there's Hunting Cat. And it says, under a door went Barney and left Hunting Cat feeling foolish indeed. Chapter 22. Hunting Cat gets into trouble. Oh, what trouble. When Barney the Shrew disappeared under the door and left Hunting Cat staring at its crack, it was a disappointment to Hunting Cat. But he did not sit around and think about his disappointments. Instead, he soon tried something else. In a little while he pushed open the screen door and started towards the green meadow. He was not quite sure what he would find to dine on, but he knew that at that time of year there were wild creatures of all kinds in the green meadow. Now in some ways Hunting Cat was right. He helped to keep Whiskers the mouse and his friends from destroying Farmer Smith's grain, and now and then he would catch a rat. On the other hand, Hunting Cat was not so good. He liked to prowl whenever the wild creatures stayed, and he was not at all particular what he killed. He would as soon as murder an innocent songbird as anything. Rather, in fact. Whenever Hunting Cat started towards the green meadow, Bud knew that he had evil in his heart, so Bud tried to keep him at home where he would help scare away the mice. When Bud came back to feed Barney the Shrew more flies, Barney was gone. Bud had not noticed Hunting Cat and did not know that he had tried to catch Barney. All Bud knew was that Barney was gone. After looking for him a while, Bud gave up trying to find him and went out to see how Weaver the Oriole was progressing with his nest. Bud had not noticed Hunting Cat sneaking down through the tall grass. Hunting Grass had heard Burlingame the Lark calling somewhere in the green meadow, and he had decided that meadowlark would taste good for a change. My real name, Burlingame, announced Lark from the top of a fence post. My real name's Burlingame. Hunting Cat stopped and listened to Burlingame's fluting voice. He wanted to make quite sure where Burlingame was sitting. Then he would sneak as near as possible and wait until Burlingame flew down to the ground for a play in the grass. Burlingame liked to sneak through grass looking for grasshoppers and other food. His back was striped, and when he walked with his head down to hide his yellow breast, he looked like the grass. He was difficult to see, but ever so often Burlingame stopped and called his name from the grass and disclosed his hiding place. Hunting Cat thought that he could easily sneak up on Burlingame unseen in the grass, for Hunting Cat was striped himself and not easy to see. He knew that somewhere under a clump of grass with a hidden grass tunnel leading to it, Mrs. Lark had a nest not far from where Burlingame was singing. Hunting Cat thought he might find it. Burlingame was always happy. He was even more good-natured than Robin Red. It was a cold and stormy day indeed when Burlingame did not sing. If the laughing yellow sun appeared for but a moment, you could have heard Burlingame greet him with, "My real name's Burlingame." Of course, Burlingame had many other songs besides just telling his name. He had almost as many as Singer the Warbler. Every time Burlingame sang, he helped Hunting Cat to find him. Soon Burlingame became hungry and flew down into the grass. There were many kinds of bugs and grasshoppers moving around, and soon he was having a fine time catching them. He was so interested he forgot entirely that Hunting Cat or Sharpen the Hawk or Reddy Fox might be near. Hunting Cat waited patiently behind a bunch of tangled grass while Burlingame came nearer. He was used to waiting. Sometimes he sat beside the friendly burrow of Dodger the Gopher for an hour or more, waiting for him to come out. He did not mind waiting a while for Burlingame the Lark. He twitched the tip of his tail slightly and bared his sharp claws. He placed his hind feet firmly on the ground so he would not slip when he sprang. He was all ready to pounce as soon as Burlingame looked the other way. Suddenly there was a dull thud on the ground beside Hunting Cat, and a large rock rolled through the grass. Of course, Burlingame was alarmed and flew to the top of the fence post, leaving Hunting Cat to his disappointment. Hunting Cat knew what had happened. He had heard rocks thud around him before when he was in mischief. He knew that Bud had seen him and had thrown a rock at him. There's a picture. And the picture says, Hunting Cat waited patiently behind a bunch of grass while Burlingame came nearer. And if you look closely, you can see Hunting Cat. That night when Hunting Cat came to the grand old house for his supper, Bud was waiting for him. Bud had a little bell on a collar, and he fastened this around Hunting Cat's neck. It was a bell like those Mrs. Smith put on her turkeys to keep Ranger the Coyote from catching them. When Ranger the Coyote heard it, it made him suspicious, and he was afraid to attack Mr. Turkey. That was not the reason Bud put the bell on Hunting Cat. Oh, no. He put it on Hunting Cat as a warning to his feathered friends. Whenever Hunting Cat tried to sneak up on them, they would hear the bell. If Hunting Cat was sitting still waiting for Whiskers the Mouse, the bell would not ring. And so Bud thought it was a clever idea. Come back tomorrow for Chapter 23, Weaver Builds His Nest. Thanks for listening with us. Take care.